CSIS 2440 is filmed before a live studio audience.
Okay, so today's topic of the day is data persistence. And we're going to give you an example here of what data persistence means. So look at this form here on the video there, or on the screen. And I'm going to fill it out. And that's my old address. I don't live there anymore, so don't try to break into my house. And notice I left out the phone. I forgot to fill out the phone number, right? And I click submit, and watch what happens. It says, please enter a phone number, and also all the data is gone. That's not a good user experience, right? And then what if I fill it out again and I put the phone number, but I forget to put the email address or something like that, right? And I click submit, and it clears it all out and just says enter an email. So this is not a good experience. Well, let's take a look at our palindrome situation here. And right now, if let's say I put this here, I put 4 palindromes, but I forget to put a word in. And I click submit. When I come back here, it erased the number of palindromes I put in. It tells me that I need to enter something. And what if I put dog here, but I forget to put the number of palindromes? And I do it, and it erases dog. What we want is that the data will stay, right? That the dog will stay, and then I don't have to re-enter the word dog. Does that make sense? And again, in our little silly program here, it's not a big deal if they have to retype the word dog or whatever. But in a program like the one I just showed you, that could be a big deal where you have to re-enter every single piece of data, okay? So how do we do this? What's an approach? I got the code open up here. Here's the palindrome code, and here's the index page. What can we do? How can we make the data, if I put a number of palindromes here, but I forget to put dog, and I click submit, how can I make that number 6 stick? Or if I forget to put the palindromes, but I put the word cat or whatever, and I click submit, how can I make the word cat stay there but still get the error message? What are some thoughts on that? Yeah, okay, so we want to somehow capture what they put in. Good. We want to capture the word dog or whatever they put, and we want to capture if they put a number or whatever one they didn't put, we want to capture the one that they did put. And then we need to remember when we click this button here, it goes to the palindrome page, right? So right now this is the index. It goes to here, and then when it goes to here, we would have to capture what they did and then send it back to the index page, right? Because that's where the index page would have to be displaying that. Okay, what are the thoughts? So we need to capture it, so let's start there. How do we capture it? And we're not going to write any code for a few minutes here. We just want to talk about this. Right now, when I push submit, let's actually put some real values in here so we don't get the error. When I push submit, this will go from the index page, right? Well, that's just the error, but it's the index page. It'll go from there to palindrome, like it did, and it did something with that data. Well, if we forget a piece of that data, I click submit, it goes for a split second to the palindrome page. The palindrome page looks and sees there's a problem, and it goes right back to this page. So in that split second is what I think you're talking about. In that split second there, let's go down to that code that captures all that. Somewhere in this area right here, because this is where we look to see if they put it in, and if they didn't, then we redirect them. So somewhere in here we need to do that. Well, we're redirecting them right here with the little code in the URL. And you said use the get or the post, and I think get's a good use case for that. Or this is a good use case for get. So we can put the word that they're searching for or the number that they entered. We can stick it right here on line 52 and send it back, right? What that if statement is doing right now, it's saying if there's a search word and there's a count, then set the variables and move on. You don't have to do anything. So there's really not a whole lot we need to do in here. We need to change our else though, okay? So our else statement is going to capture the one thing that they did enter, whatever it is, either the word or the number. And it's going to put it in the URL. So for example, we're going to somehow, we'll get to how in a minute, but somehow we're going to say word equals dog and the number equals 4 or whatever. And we're going to pass that back, and then we'll do something with it, okay? Now, you'll never have a case where the word will be dog and the number will be 4. It's always going to be one or the other of those, because The only way you got here is because one of them was missing. Does that make sense? But we'll have to, right now it's all hard coded. We don't want to do that. We're going to soft code it. So that's the ultimate goal, though, is to get those values, or the missing value, or the kept value in the URL so we can send it back to the original page. So we'll move that for now, but that's the idea. So let's go to our index page, and let's say once it's in the URL, what do we do with it? Right? Once it's in the URL, so in other words, if we got here and it did say word equals dog, what do we do with that? Well, we want to look in the get, grab it, and stick it right there, right? That make sense? Okay. So how do we do that? Yep, yeah, exactly right. Look in the get. So we'll just do if is set get, and we'll just use the word. That works for me for a variable. So if it's set, then we'll just set, like, we'll call the variable error word or something like that, meaning this is part of our error trapping system, okay? And we'll set it equal to that actual word. Maybe error word's not the best name for the variable, but it works. Otherwise, error word is nothing, okay? Well, that's a start. We've now checked in the get to see if it's there. If it's there, then we're going to set it equal to this variable here. If it's not there, we'll just let that variable be empty. Now, what am I going to do with that? Okay, so that's correct. We're going to stick that in the box somehow. So the question is how and where do we do that? Where's the box in our code? What line is it on? 21, yes. 21 is that box right there, the enter a word box. How can I get this word, whatever that is, to be right there? Value, exactly right. So the value property, value equals something in quotes, right? That's the old attribute name equals something in quotes. And we literally just want the word dog or cat or whatever they put into the field to go there. Well, all we got to do is inside of there, just open up some PHP. So PHP echo error word and close it out. That's it. So that'll put the value in there. So if error word's nothing, it'll just be blank. And if it's something, it won't be blank. That's it. So now, when I hit enter on this, because you can see already the variable says word equals dog, when I hit enter, dog should appear in that field, and it does. So if I put cat here, then cat will appear there. So again, remember the palindrome page is ultimately going to be what sticks that into the URL variable, right? But we're just doing it manually for testing purposes. Now we could do the exact same thing for the count, because what if they put cat, but they forgot to put a number, right? So we need to capture that. So we can do number equals 4 or something like that, and then do something with that number, right? So let's capture that. That's easy enough. We already know how to do that. We just num, and we'll call it error num. Right? That's pretty straightforward. It's just going to be a number. Then what? In fact, let's put that as a 0 because it's actually a number. Now this is going to get weird because what we have to do right now, the default behavior is that how many palindromes is selected. Well, I want the number, in this case 4, to be selected, right? So in other words, we have a loop here that's building this. So if we look at the code, just capture this and we'll see if we can put it into a text editor so we can look at it a little bit better. Okay, we have this now, and let's open it up in a browser. All I did was just copy the PHP, the HTML that the PHP created, and right now it's saying how many palindromes, right? That's just the raw HTML, because we have the word selected right there. If I remove the word selected and I place it down here, for example, selected, then it's going to show up with 6 there, right? So we want to look in that variable, grab the number, which in our case was the number 4, or whatever that ends up being there, and we want to put selected in that spot. Well, the problem is, or the challenge is, that we're using a loop to generate it, right? So we can't just go look for 4 and stick it in there. what's our approach for that? Exactly right. In our loop, we're going to look at the iteration. If the iteration that we're on, if x equals whatever that number is, then dump the word selected in there, right? That's part one. But there's one other issue. The word selected is already on line 17 there. So in the event that we are going to be putting it inside of our loop, we have to also not put it on line 17. Follow? So in that case, if error num is anything, don't put it on line 17. Follow? And then figure out where to put it on line 20. So that's exactly right. So we can use our friend the ternary operator for stuff like this. Super easy. So right here, we're going to replace that word selected with some PHP. So let's open up our PHP, and we're going to do a ternary, and then we're going to close our PHP. And we're going to echo out whatever the ternary decides to do. Okay? So that's going to either be the word selected or not. So what's our condition? We can do it either way, right? You can do, if it's not 0, then don't put selected. And if it is 0, put selected, right? So either way works. So let's just look at it this way. If error num exists, right? That just putting it there means if it's true, right? That's the same thing as doing this, right? It's exactly the same thing. So we just stick it there. If it's true, that means there is an error number, then we don't want to echo anything, right? If it's false, however, we want to echo the word selected. And notice I'm putting spaces there because I don't want it to bump up against the word hidden or bump up against the word disabled, so that you have like just one long word that's called disabled selected hidden, right? You want it to be disabled space selected hidden space, or selected space hidden. So you could do that, or you could do it the other way. If not error, then selected, and then do nothing here. Either way is fine, right? Make sense? Don't forget the spaces. Everybody understand why that's okay? So right now we can already test this part because we have an error num in our URL that we just manually stuck there, right here, the number 4. So right now, when I hit enter to refresh this page, what behavior, if we did our code properly, what behavior do we expect? It just chooses the first thing in the list, which is 1 palindrome, right? And there you go, 1 palindrome. So that's working right now the way we want it to, okay? And let's just to make sure, we're going to remove it, and it says how many palindromes. So far, so good. Let's put a value back up there again. Num equals 4, okay? Now in the loop, this is the thing that Charlie pointed out a minute ago, and we just need to, right here, inside the option, we want to concatenate on just another ternary operator that checks to see if the error is the same number as the iteration of the loop we're on. And if it is, put out the word selected. If not, don't do anything. So remember, when you're going to concatenate, I always just close the quote, dot, dot, and then reopen the quote, right? And then inside of there goes our little ternary business right there. And then for the ternary, we're going to be checking that x is equal to error num, right? In the event that they are the same, we want to just put selected. And in the event that they are different, we want to just do nothing. That should give us what we want. Refresh, and this should jump to 4, I should say. There you go, it did. And just to prove it, let's change it to 9. And it changes it to 9. Pretty easy, right? So now we have both of those things working, where if they have the word in there, it'll grab the word and stick it in there. If they have the number in there, it'll stick that in there. So now the next piece, we want to customize the error message a little bit. We want the error message to say, hey, enter a word, or hey, enter a number. We'll come back to that. Let's get the URL working so that we can test this. So back over here in the PHP, Palindrome PHP page, you'll notice here we have all these functions here from line 1 through 46. This is getting kind of out of control in my opinion. It's too much PHP in my face. So we're going to move it out. Okay? We're going to move it out into its own file. And this is a very common thing I do in my PHP programs. I will create a folder called includes, and inside of there I'll put a bunch of files that we're going to include elsewhere, right? So let's go ahead and grab all of our functions right here, and we'll even grab those variables right there. Okay, all of that. So now all that's left here really is the display the form or don't display the form stuff, right? And we might even move that into a function later. Let's go ahead and copy that stuff we just took out. So here's all of our functions. In fact, let's just call this file functions. Why not? Includes. So I'm putting it in the includes folder there, and it's called functions. All right, now we have this nice thing here. I probably should take that out and put it in a separate file because it's not really a function, but it's fine for now. So over here, we want to make sure we don't lose that, right? So there's a function for that. It's called include, and then we put the file path, which is includes/functions.php, okay? Now, it literally just copies and pastes that code right there for us, okay? That's it. So nothing will change. Let's just run it the way we've always been running it, where we actually put the values in there. So we have them put the number 2, they chose cat, we click submit, and there we go. It seems to be working. We put Madam and we put Bob, and everything's still working as we expect it to, but we now have a little bit easier to look at file here because we moved all that stuff out into a separate file. The only reason I did it here is just because I wanted to clean it up a little bit because we had all that code that was getting in the way of looking at the real stuff we care about for today. So let's just make sure we're still on the same page of what we're trying to do here. Let's go back to the home page, and we want our Palindrome page to stick into this URL word equals whatever the user entered. They entered Beavis. And so it'll dump it in there, and eventually we're going to make some custom error messages when they do that, okay? So how do we get that into our URL? Well, we have to change things a little bit, okay? We need to say that if this is empty, or if these are not empty, then we create the variables and we just move on. We're done. That's what we're already doing. Let's block this out for just a minute, okay? If, on the other hand, so else, we need to capture search word and or pal count, whichever one is actually there, because only one of them will be there, or none of them, right? Okay, so I see what you're saying. So the question was, could we use 2 else ifs here and one for each variable? However, you wouldn't need to do that because there's only going to be one for sure, right? At the most, or it'd be 0 or 1, right? It can't be 2, because if they're both there, then we just move on with the code. So either one will be there or none will be there. And so we're going to just say, basically, we're going to kind of do this again separately, okay? So let's just sort of copy this here, and we're going to say if it's not empty, then we're going to go with like our error word is going to equal whatever that word is. So in theory, that if the word was there, then the pal count wouldn't be, right? Unless we goofed up our code somewhere. Or if the pal count is there, then the word won't be there. Only one of those is going to be the case, right? So then we can do another if, which is going to be almost identical. So let's go here, and it's just going to be looking for the pal count. Now, you may be thinking of maybe slightly more efficient ways to do this thing that I'm doing, but in a moment when we add one extra piece of functionality, you're going to see why I did this way. All right, we're going to go with error count. Actually, we're going to call the error number palindromes. Okay, before we do anything else, I want to make sure this makes sense. On line 4, if both of the variables are not empty, both of the get variables, or sorry, the post variables are not empty, which means they put a number and they put a word. If both of those are there, create those 2 variables on line 6 and 7 and just move on with the rest of the code, make the form, let them enter the palindromes they want to search, they want to check, and that's it. However, if this is not true, that means either that one is missing or that one is missing or both. Okay? But it will always be either 0 or one of them is present. Okay, it'll never be 0 or missing, because if 0 are missing, then lines 6 and 7 run, and we don't look at the else statement ever. We all good with that? Okay. So in the event that we get to line 11 and 12, that means that one of them or more is missing. 0 or 1 are missing. So only this will happen or only this. I mean, both if statements will run. Okay, both if statements will run. However, only one of them will create a variable. Either that variable would be created or that one, but not both. You all agree with that? That being the case, we could save ourselves a little bit of processing time by doing an else if here, right? Yeah, so if this one occurs, then we won't bother checking this. That just saves us a little bit of time. All right, so let's try this out and see what happens, okay? We're gonna use those two variables here, so one of them will be created. And in that case, now I have to do something in this header here. This can't be an else statement because it's else what? We've already got the else statement for that if. Okay, so you could move this header right into here, right? Does that work? So we just need to tack on, we need to go and word equals the EW variable, and what did I call it, num? Equals the EN number, right? Now in some cases the word will have a value, and in other cases the num will have a value. So to get EW there, we'll just do our little concatenation trick, put error word there, and to get the num, we just tack it on at the end, and there you go. So now if you look at what's going on here, line 4 says if both of them are present, the number and the word, we're good. Grab them, create the variables, and move on with our code, and we end up jumping down to line 18. If, however, one of them or more of them is missing, then go to line 9 or line 11 and see which one it is. If it's the word that's present, then capture the word variable. Otherwise, capture the number variable, because it'll be one of those two. Won't be both. Only one of them will be present, or none of them, but both of them will not be. Then once we've done that, we've got these variables. Now tack them onto our header and redirect the page. On line 14, we're redirecting the page, and we're dumping those values into the URL. All right, let's test it out. So let's clear this. And right now, if I click submit, it should just stay here and give us our error message. If I put the number 7 in here, for example, it should stay here, but it should also stay with 7. And it does. I clicked it and resubmitted, and look in our URL. It shows word equals nothing and number equals 7, okay? So let's clear that out. And now let's put a word, but don't put a number. And it should say word equals dog and number equals nothing. And it does, and dog stayed, right? If we did empty, or not empty, right, we should have the exact same result. So let's just clear this out here, and we'll put dog in there, and it should still work just the same, right? And if we do vice versa, it should hold the 3 and say enter a word. All right, good question. So now that we have all this, we need to get more specific, in my opinion, because enter something, well, I did enter something. So we need to be a little bit more clear. I want you to enter an actual number or word or whatever the thing is you didn't enter. So how can we get specific with our error trapping? Let's look at the code where that's happening. That's line 25 through 28. What can we do to that to get better error trapping? Yeah, we're going to do another branch, another if statement, right? So we'll look at exactly what the if statement is going to be in a minute, but that's just basically what I was looking for. We need to do a switch or an if or something, right? We need a branch because we have multiple things now. Think about that one I showed you at the very beginning with the name and address and all that stuff. All of that, I mean, I'd have to be a pretty monstrous if address is missing, if phone is missing, if, right? What if all of them are missing? What do we do? So here's a really simple technique that you can use for this kind of stuff. And we can, if we want, look at all of the get variables and see which ones are there and see which ones aren't. We can do that. It's totally fine. However, we could also tack on one more variable to our URL that tells us which set of messages to show. So we can have like an error code, right? Some sort of code that says, oh, these are the ones missing, or these are the ones missing, right? And so, for example, we could say something like, and error code, or whatever you want to call the variable, equals 1. In the event that it's 1, display this message. In the event that it's 2, display this message. In the event that it's 3, display this message. Well, in our case, in the event that it's 3, it's going to say, display both messages. Okay? This is a good use case for a switch statement without a break. Okay? So let's take a look at what I'm saying here. let's decide that we say error code equals 1 versus error code equals 2 versus error code equals 3 will be the count is missing, or the num is missing, the word is missing, or both. Okay, 1, 2, 3, num, word, both. Okay, so if that's the case, here's what we can do. Let's do a switch. Before we do the switch, we need to capture this error code variable up here, right? So we're looking for the error code. We capture the error code just like we capture the other variables. And then down here, let's do a switch on that error code. All right, our switch statement is going to be case 3, case 2, case 1. Well, what we can do, if we make case 3 just blank, so case 3 is nothing, case 2 will be and this is going to be pseudocode. What did we say 2 was? The word is missing, Case 1 is the pal count is missing, or the number is missing. If we could, right here, not put a break in the event that the number 3 is chosen, then when we get to case 3, it will show case 2 and case 1. So if we could somehow magically put a break here sometimes and not put one there other times, right? So in other words, in the event that 3 is chosen, don't have break there, and then 2 will display and 1 will display. But in the case that 2 is chosen, we want a break to be there. That's the idea, right? Let's put some code in there and we'll see. So this is fine, except for what's going to happen with the error code being 2. It's going to show both of those, right? If we have the error code 3, that's exactly the behavior we want, right? If they choose 3, because we said 3 means both. So in other words, let's just put that in there manually. And we're going to go error code equals 3. That's exactly the behavior we want. Enter a word to search for and choose a number of palindromes. That's exactly what we want. And in fact, if we enter 1, that also works. Choose a number of palindromes. But if we enter 2, that's where we have a problem. 2 is it's going to behave just like 3. Does everybody understand why, first of all? Okay, so if I put a break right here, then 1 and 2 work perfectly, but 3 doesn't work. 3 will display 1, or 3 will display 2. So there's an easy way to fix this. What can we do? So that's a good solution right there. That'll work. The thing I was going to do is just right here was say if, basically this, but I was going to say if not 3, then break. That'll also work. Both of those will work, but that's a good solution too. Yeah, either way is fine. So this one should also work. So if case 3 occurs, then this runs, and then it checks this, and it doesn't break because it's not 3, or it is 3. And then it prints that. So that should also work. Let's just test it. Error code equals 1 gives us choose a number of palindromes. Error code number 2 gives us enter a word to search for. Error code number 3 gives us both. Groovy. So now we just have to pass that. We don't need this anymore at all. Notice here, this was looking in the get for something called error. That's not even a thing anymore, right? Because error was just this generic thing to display an error. We're going to be more specific now. We're going to use error code equals 1, 2, or 3. Okay, so let's get rid of this. We don't need that anymore. And so now we have this nice switch statement here. Everything looks like it's working. Now let's add it to the palindrome code where we somehow magically get the error code in there. Right, which means we need to go and error code equals some error code variable, right? Which we haven't created just yet. Okay? So how do we figure out what that error code is? If we go back to this method, right, and we say if the post is not empty, then capture that word so we can put it in the URL, else we'll set the error counter to some value, right? We'll talk about the value in just a minute, but let's start off by resetting the error counter to just setting it to 0. Okay? So if we have a word, capture it. If we don't, we want the error code. What did we say it was for word? Was that 1 or 2? Word is 2. Okay. So because of that, and this little trick I'm going to do, I'm going to reverse the order of these two guys. Okay, and I'll show you why. What I'm going to do is increment the error counter, right? I'm going to say it's plus equal 1. So it's going to go from 0 to 1. And in this, that's going to be my else there, okay? And in this event, I'm going to also increment the counter plus equals 2. Why am I doing that? Yeah, if I get just the PAL count missing, then the error counter will equal 1. It'll go from 0 to 1, increments from 0 to 1. If I have just the search word missing, it increments from 0 to 2. If I have both of them missing, it'll first increment to 1, and then it'll increment to 2. Or it'll increment from 1 plus 2, which equals 3. Follow that? Does that make sense? So now I will have either 1 or 2 or 3. Okay? And then in my header, all I got to do is just, oh, I've already got it there. I wrote it a second ago. That should be everything. Let's test it, but that should be everything. Okay, so here we go. Starting from scratch. Let's just make sure it works the normal way first. 2 palindromes, search for dogs, senile, felines, and submit. And looks like it's working just fine. Okay, go back home. Let's leave off palindrome, but we'll put a word. Choose a number of palindromes. Let's leave off both. And then let's choose a palindrome, but not a word. And it just says enter a word to search for. Put cat or dog or whatever. And it works just fine. There you go. So that's data persistence. We kept the data, we kept from losing the data when they messed up. Because that's a really bad user experience. That form I showed you at the beginning where I left off my phone number on quote accident and then the whole form wiped out. I've actually been on websites that do that. That's nuts. I mean, that's just terrible programming. Okay, what questions do we have so far? We're going to add one more thing. So the question is, yeah, if I swap the order of this, you are probably right, sir. That should be okay. So if there's search word, it goes to, yeah, you're right. That would have worked just fine. I'm an idiot.
I can't do this anymore, man. My head's about to explode. My whole life sucks. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. My dad just died. We just killed Bambi. I'm out here getting my ass kicked, and every time I drive down the road, I want to jerk the wheel into a goddamn bridge embankment.
So let's just test that, but I'm pretty sure you are correct. So nothing gives me both error messages. Cat gives me number of palindromes. And this one should give me enter a word. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking there, right? I don't know.
I'm retarded.
Okay, good question, good point. Other questions, thoughts, comments? So yeah, the question being that what happens if I have like 5 fields, like the one we did before, the name, the address, the city, state, all that. It can get pretty messy, and you have an assignment coming up where you have to check for 4 or 5 things, and you have to keep the data persistent. That assignment might actually be on your final. That might be where it's at. But somewhere along the way, you've got an assignment coming up dealing with validation and persistence, and you have to capture more than just 2 things like this. And now you can. I was thinking about this in last class, in a previous class, and for some reason in my brain, I wanted to do the count binary. So 1, 2, 4, 8, 7 for each new, or 16 for each new thing, instead of just 1, 2, 3 like we're doing. And for some reason that seems to be the right idea, but I can't quite wrap my head around why we would want to do that. But the only thing I could think of is if you do it in binary, then every combination of adding numbers together will be unique.
And so you know right away.
So you know exactly which code you're dealing with, right? Because there's only one way to get 3 when you're dealing with the sum of 2 numbers. It's 1 and 2. But there are multiple ways to get the number 4. 1 plus 3 or 2 plus 2, right? And so if you use binary, 1, 2, 4, 8, no matter how you combine those, any 2 numbers or any 3 numbers, it'll always be a unique number. But that aside, that's something to think about when you build your homework that's going to have multiple things there, because you're going to have a whole bunch of these, right? You're going to have, plus 3, plus 4, or whatever numbers you choose to make your error codes work, right? Okay, last thing we're going to add into this. The big thing that we've done so far for the past, however long, hour-ish or whatever, is data persistence, right? I want to get that thing into your brain, that phrase into your brain, data persistence. We're keeping the data so we don't lose it when we move around between pages, right? And later we're going to learn about that where you want to keep the user logged in, right? That's when we learn about cookies and sessions and things like that. You want to keep the data persistent because if you didn't use a cookie or a session, which we'll learn about later, when they log in and then they go to another page, they'd have to log in again. Every time they go to a new page, they have to log in again. Well, you want to persist that data, persist the fact that they're logged in. You want to keep moving that forward. Sometimes you want to maybe just some setting that they chose or whatever, right? And you want to move it. We've already started doing that a little bit when the other day we captured what was in the post and then copied it, put it in a hidden field, and then made a new form that we could repost that had that secret hidden stuff in it, right? That's a form of data persistence, okay? This next thing we're gonna look at is data validation, right? We've already kind of done that with our thing where we stripped out all the stuff out of the palindromes. We got the punctuation spaces out. We're gonna do something similar using regular expression again. Let's just say we don't want them to enter a number in their search word. Like they can't do D0G for dog or something like that, okay? Simple little thing. So where, first of all, do we want to check for that? Yeah, exactly. Line 7 and 8, that's also what Jake was saying as well. Right here, if there's a search word and a pal count, then we have to check and see, okay, is it the right valid search word? So we can do a couple things here. We can just simply say if, and we want to do some regular expression, right? So what's the function for comparing, not for replacing, but for comparing?
Preg.
Yes. Preg match, very good. Preg match and preg replace, right? Okay, so, and there's two parameters, right? The first one is the actual expression that the pattern, and the second one is the thing we're comparing it to, okay? So we're going to be comparing the post, right? That's easy enough. What's the pattern? I'm just trying to avoid numbers, that's all.
/D.
There you go, /D, that's it. That's /D. If it matches /D, but how many though? There has to be at least one.
At least one, so plus.
Plus, right? Plus is one or more, right? But don't forget our little trick we have to, sorry, I know that was a little painful. The reason I do that though, because there's an old, I think Pascal said it, I'm paraphrasing, but basically a student learns more when he teaches himself than when somebody teaches it to them, right? That's the paraphrase of what he's saying. It's also 400-year-old French, so I'm not sure if the translation is exactly that, but that's the basic idea. So I often, you guys will, if you've been in my classes long enough, you'll know I do that all the time where I try to drag it out of you. Anyway, don't forget though, because the way PHP works here, we have to put the slashes around it. And so we're saying if it matches this pattern, in other words, if this word has even one digit in it, you're done, you're out of here. So if that's the case, then we can do, maybe we can redirect right here. We can do header right here. Yeah, so how about this? Header, and we want to do the location, dot, right? And then we also still want to, what we don't want is they type the D1G, and then when they click submit, the D1G goes away and they have to retype it again. We just want to be able to go in there and edit the one out of there, right? So we want to do the same kind of thing we're doing down here, right? We want to do basically this exact same thing. Notice we don't even need this error true anymore, by the way. See that? That doesn't need to be there. Okay. That aside. So let's do this. Let's just do a variation of this where we're going to take the word and pass it in. So let's put this below the place where we actually create the variables. Follow? Okay, so we create the variables above, and then we'll pass in whatever the search word is, because if we're in line 7 through 10, the number and the word are both there. So we need to pass those back so we don't lose them, right? So search word will go here, and pal count will go here. And then error code, let's just decide that it's 4, right? Let's just decide that. All right, so here we go. Let's just check here. And we need to capture another error message here. So case 4. So let's look at this again. If we get into this block, that means that both values were there. But then we are going to check and see if that's the proper pattern. And if it matches this, it's not the proper pattern. So if it matches this, then we have an issue, and we're going to redirect back to the home page, but we're going to send back the word they typed and the number they typed so they don't have to redo all that. And we're going to pass the error code 4. So now we said 4 is search words cannot contain numbers. So all this together should do what we want. So here we go. Let's just clear all this junk out of here. So far so good. Let's just do a real one to make sure it works the right way. And this looks good. Now let's do 3, and we'll say D0G. And the data does not go away, but it also gives us the error message, right? If I get rid of it, then we get this error message. If I refresh it and I put this but not that, we're good. And the only thing that I don't quite like about this is if I put that there, I should get choose a number of palindromes and words can't have zeros in them, right? But I won't, because the way we wrote our code. I'll just get, you see what I mean? It's only giving me choose number palindromes, right? It never gets that far, because the reason why is because it gets here and this both of those are not full. So because they're not both full, line 11 never gets run, and this ends up getting run. So it tells us this message, enter a number of palindromes. Well, as soon as I do that, now I'm going to get another message, which is you can't have numbers. Not the end of the world, but I'll leave it for you as a challenge to see how you would fix that. So we're done, but the last 2 minutes, let's see what the solution Jake was saying here. So we want to move this down here. Actually, let's move. Okay, so this will get tricky, because in this case we're using these variable names, and in this case we're using those variable names. If we move this, if we try to do the header statement down here, well, the problem then becomes that I don't have access to these variables because they were never created. So what we could do is this, right? This is not, there's still an option here. The problem is, again, I just want to make clear the point. We're trying to remove both of these header statements. We removed one from line 18 already, and then we put the one from 18 down on 21. Then we remove line 12. Theoretically, we want to do that. What we can do is if preg match comes up true, which is bad, we can then actually say error word equals search word, because that is a variable that we did create. And we can do the same thing for, what is it, en, which is equal to the pal count. I'm going to need curly braces for that, folks. And then we can also say error code equals 4, right? We can put all those in there. And then down here, if error code exists, do the header thing. That should do exactly the same thing. Now in this case, we actually ended up having an extra if, right? Because this is extra now. We didn't have that if before. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Let's try it though. Okay, so let's run this. And we're going to put a number, put D1G or D21G, whatever, and search word cannot contain numbers. So it seems to be working. Let's change that to nothing. It should tell us to enter a word. Let's forget to do anything. It should tell us to enter both. Let's put a word but not a number. It tells us to choose a number. Pick that, and it does the right thing. So that's working. This way of doing it here is working. This is good though. I'm glad you guys are thinking about it and trying different options. And again, the code's going to be available in lecture notes if you want to download it and mess around with it.